The Illuminati were not world rulers. They began as a tiny Ingolstadt circle, expanded into German-speaking elite and Masonic networks, and were suppressed in Bavaria within a decade. That contradiction is the real mystery. Most people imagine the Illuminati as a hidden government behind revolutions, banks, wars, and presidents. But the evidence points somewhere stranger and much more human. It points to a professor of canon law in Ingolstadt. It points to members using classical and humanist code names. And it points to a government that saw a dangerous revolution in the language of reason. I used to think the Illuminati story was about power surviving in the shadows. But when I looked closer, the story changed. The question stopped being whether they ruled everything. The better question became why anyone believed they could. This is No Mystics. And this is the truth about the Bavarian Illuminati. The common belief is simple. The Illuminati survived suppression and became a hidden world government. They directed the French Revolution. They engineered modern history from behind closed doors. It's easy to see why this story spread. The real order did use hidden names, graded membership, and private correspondence. Its members criticized superstition, obscurantism, religious influence over public life, and abuses of monarchical power. In 18th century Bavaria, that was not harmless student talk. Church, monarchy, and tradition were not background scenery. They were the structure of public life. They shaped what could be printed, what could be taught, and who could hold influence. So a private reform society attacking those foundations could look like a match in a powder room. And the order made itself easier to fear. It borrowed the language of secrecy while preaching improvement. That combination gave later writers everything they needed. But here's the problem. The evidence does not show an unbroken, world-controlling Illuminati. It shows a small Enlightenment order founded in 1776, suppressed in the 1780s, and mythologized afterward. To understand why, we need to start in Ingolstadt. On the 1st of May, 1776, Adam Weishaupt founded the order in the electorate of Bavaria. Weishaupt was not a wizard, banker, or hidden emperor. He was a professor of canon law at the University of Ingolstadt. That detail matters. Canon law was not an abstract subject in his world. It was one of the rule books connecting belief, education, marriage, discipline, and authority. Weishaupt understood the machinery of religious authority from the inside. He also lived in an age obsessed with reform, reason, education, and the limits of absolute power. Across Europe, learned societies, salons, reading circles, and lodges had become laboratories for new ideas. Some were harmless places to discuss books. Others made rulers nervous because conversation could become coordination. The first group was not even called the Illuminati in the way we use the word now. It was initially called the Perfectibilists. The name tells you the ambition. They believed people and society could be improved through reasoned education. That sounds mild today. In Weishaupt's world, it was explosive. Because the question was not just what people should learn. The question was who had the right to shape their minds. When I first saw the name Illuminati, I expected scale. I expected ministries, armies, money, and embassies. What I found instead was smaller. By 1778, early membership is reported at about 12 members. By the summer of that year, it reportedly reached 27 members in 5 commands. That is not nothing, but it is not a world government. The order's first growth pattern looks less like an empire and more like a campus network. Its power came from trust, selection, and gradual initiation. That made the group feel disciplined from the inside. From the outside, it made the group feel invisible and therefore dangerous. The names make the pattern easier to misunderstand. Weishaupt used the name Spartacus. Other members used names like Ajax, Agathon, Tiberius, and Erasmus Rhodomodamus. Those names sound theatrical, but they reveal the order's self-image. These were educated men, borrowing the authority of antiquity and humanist scholarship. They wanted to look older, wiser, and more universal than one Bavarian classroom. Franz Anton von Massenhausen was part of this early circle. That matters because the order began through personal ties, not through command of institutions. And this is where the fear begins to make sense. Hidden names made ordinary students look like a republic inside a monarchy. Because after 1780, the story gets bigger. That year, Adolph von Knigge joined the order. Knigge mattered because he understood recruitment, ritual, and elite association. He helped expand the Illuminati through German Masonic networks. This does not mean Freemasonry and Illuminism were the same thing. It means the order moved through social spaces where privacy, ritual, and reform already had a language. Knigge's skill was not supernatural influence. It was organization. He could translate Weishaupt's small classroom project into forms that ambitious, educated men already recognized. He also gave the order something Weishaupt alone did not have: access. A secret society does not expand by announcing itself in the town square. It expands through introductions that feel personal, respectable, and safe. That made the Illuminati more visible to recruits. It also made them more suspicious to authorities. Here is the first mini-reveal. The very channels that helped the order grow also made it easier to detect. A private society leaves traces when it recruits, writes, argues, and reorganizes. And this order argued. Weishaupt and Knigge did not simply build in harmony. They disagreed over control, structure, and the direction of the order. That conflict matters because conspiracy legends usually imagine perfect coordination. The documents suggest something much more ordinary. The Illuminati were an organization run by people. People disagree. People defend status. People lose trust. Their conflict became serious enough that Knigge left on the 1st of July, 1784. That date breaks the fantasy of perfect control. A world-commanding machine does not usually fracture over leadership disputes before conquering the world. Real organizations have egos, paperwork, recruitment problems, and bad meetings. The Bavarian Illuminati were no exception. And that makes the true story more useful than the legend. Then Bavaria moved. In the 1780s, the Bavarian state suppressed the order through edicts, investigations, and confiscations. The reason was not that officials had discovered a planet-spanning machine. The reason was that private organization plus reform politics looked dangerous. The state saw a disciplined, hidden group criticizing the moral and political order. In a world built on hierarchy, that was enough. The crackdown also shows how states create evidence while trying to destroy threats. By confiscating writings, Bavaria preserved the very material that lets us study the order today. Here, the paper trail becomes essential. Printed collections of original Illuminati writings appeared after the crackdown. Some of the best-known collections appeared in 1787, when Bavarian authorities and editors circulated seized material as warning and proof. That matters because hostile publication can still preserve useful evidence. Those documents help historians study what the order actually said and did. They show structure, ambition, recruitment, and ideological conflict. They show a movement that wanted influence through education, discipline, and moral reform. They also show a movement that depended on letters, meetings, trust, and fragile human networks. That is important because real control requires durable institutions. The Illuminati did not possess those institutions. They had no army to enforce orders, no treasury to fund policy, and no ministry to administer territory. They tried to influence people who might one day influence institutions. That is ambition, not proof of world rule. They also show limits. They do not prove continuous global rule. They do not prove verified organizational control of the French Revolution. This is where responsible history has to slow down. Later writers did connect the Illuminati to revolution. In the 1790s, writers like John Robison and Augustin Barruel helped turn scattered fear into a grand revolutionary explanation. Their claims mattered because Europe was already trying to explain the shock of revolution, violence, and collapsing authority. A hidden mastermind was easier to imagine than a continent-wide crisis of taxes, war, privilege, hunger, and political legitimacy. That simplification had emotional power because it turned chaos into a culprit. But connection in a pamphlet is not the same as command in the evidence. They prove something more grounded. A small order can become more powerful in imagination after it is destroyed than it ever was alive. So what actually happened? Everything points to one conclusion. The Illuminati did not survive into the modern age as the steering wheel of history. After their late 1780s collapse, they survived mainly as a story. That is, the aha. The myth is not evidence that the order controlled history. The myth is evidence that societies fear hidden networks when old authority feels unstable. This also explains the French Revolution claim. Later writers connected the Illuminati to the Revolution, but verified organizational control is not established by the evidence. The timing itself should make us cautious. The order's documented crisis comes before the legend's greatest claim. That does not mean Illuminati members had no ideas, no contacts, or no ambitions. It means ambition is not the same thing as control. The better question is not, did they rule the world? The better question is, why did such a small Bavarian order become the perfect container for modern fear? The answer is that the Illuminati story sits at the collision point of privacy, reform, and authority. They challenged superstition and power in an age that treated both as pillars of order. That did not make them world rulers. It made them useful villains. And once a villain becomes useful, people keep rewriting it for their own fears. This Bavarian order reminds us that fear can turn an Ingolstadt circle into a world-sized shadow. But the Illuminati were not the only order whose paperwork became a legend. I'm here to help you know the society's history turned mysterious. Which Bavarian Illuminati claim should we test next? The French Revolution, the Masonic networks, or Weishaupt himself? See you in the next archive.